What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Unknown Destination, the podcast where we talk about anything and everything new in the travel industry. My name is Justin, that is Andrew, and we are back for a consistent second week in a row.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to try to be more consistent this year and get as much content as we possibly can out to you guys. But thank you for tuning in. And yeah, Andrew, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm just riding the Dogecoin to the moon, as the kids say. So I'm living it up, ready for this. I mean, we got kind of teased here in Michigan last week with some 70+ degree days, and now, I mean, I guess I can't complain. The sun is out, but it's still a little bit chilly. It's back down into the 40s, 50s. Supposed to be snow in a couple days. So
yeah, I think I sent you a screenshot. Even here in the centralized state of Missouri, we're supposed to get some snow Tuesday night. So
that if that happens, I'm going to lose my mind. So you guys will probably see me absolutely cracked on our next episode.
It just doesn't make sense. But anyway, enough about the weather. Let's talk about getting away, because that's what this podcast is all about, and being able to avoid those horrible snowy days by going to warmer places. Obviously, every episode we kind of start off lately talking about things related to COVID-19 and restrictions. I'm also kind of convinced that's why our podcast doesn't get the play that it normally would, because I think they're putting us down for saying the C word.
Oh, yeah, probably.
But the first thing I have is just something that Andrew actually kind of touched about probably happening a few episodes ago. And that was a destination offering vaccinations to its visitors. And that is the island of the Maldives is now offering vaccines to anybody who comes to visit.
Yeah, and I know I had talked about it. It was probably quite a while ago that they were kind of playing around with this idea as the vaccines were rolling out. And I think even just on our most latest episode, the Maldives, I had brought up as being reopened for tourism as long as you were vaccinated. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense that they would kind of pair that together.
Yeah, they're calling it their 3V tourism scheme. 3V standing for visit, vaccinate, and vacation. So, you know, I like the little play on words there.
I'm a big fan of play on words. Sold.
Same.
I'm going to the Maldives.
Okay, so I think on my end, that's actually the only directly related thing to COVID that I have. So
yeah, I've only got just a couple things. We touched a lot on our very lengthy episode last week, so not too much has changed in the world of reopenings, anything due to COVID. There was just a couple things that I had here, and that was one from the Indian airline Vistara. They were banned from flying to Hong Kong for 2 weeks earlier this month, after bringing in passengers who had tested positive for COVID on 2 separate flights. Four passengers initially tested positive on April 4th's Delhi to Hong Kong flight. 25 people on that flight have now tested positive. So obviously this is day 12 coming in, so you really can't tell if this was a spread due to the flight or they just got it after the fact. But they did provide a little seat map here of where everyone was sitting that is now tested positive, and you're probably leaning more towards the fact that it was on the plane. It's very kind of centrally located.
Wow.
So, yeah, this is, everybody would have presented a negative test to board. So just kind of another one of those things. Now, with this being said, there isn't enough information to say whether they actually got it directly from the flight. Many sources that we've used previously, and what kind of the general consensus is that flying is actually probably one of the safest things that you can be doing right now in kind of the COVID wake, just because of all of the measures that are being taken place currently. Obviously, early on in the pandemic, we were very, very against this. Now they're kind of evening out, but this also could be because of the kind of the uptick that India as a country has had with their numbers. They're pretty much in a spike right now, so hard to tell.
Yeah, definitely. And we've heard throughout this that false positives can happen. False negatives on tests are incredibly rare, but you never know what was happening in the airport on a flight. If somebody was exposed while they were in the airport, definitely something that could have happened. So as far as tracing it, it's next to impossible, but better safe than sorry is definitely the way that most countries have handled this, and I think that's what's happening here.
Yeah, that's just it goes on to say that there have been other flights identified with clusters of passengers that were infected, but it does remain fairly uncommon. And flights into places like Hong Kong, New Zealand, and Australia are extensively tested. So that's good news overall because it's kind of showing that this is an anomaly that really is kind of, this is not a norm for the industry currently. But that is just kind of something that I had on that. Another quick thing that we had, I believe, on it's not directly COVID news, but it's related in the fact that Australia has made the decision to keep their borders closed. They do not have a date when they plan on opening it. Kind of, they're taking a not so fast approach. And this was after the decision. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said this past Sunday that they were going to be keeping their borders closed to all non-citizens and non-residents, which has been going on since March of 2020, and permitting very limited international arrivals. So this is, obviously bringing their citizens and residents back.
Right.
And this is following in the wake of their recently abandoned goal to vaccinate nearly all of their 26 million population by the end of this year. This is because of the advice that was given to them that people under the age of 50 should be taking Pfizer's vaccine rather than AstraZeneca's shot. So kind of them going to an all Pfizer approach has led them to keeping their borders closed. They're looking at opening overseas, but only for essential purposes, and returning home via home quarantine for the second half of this year. But that's only a possibility, and it's considered only in the planning stages. So they're very, very likely that we will not see Australia open flights for international that is not a non-essential until middle of next year to late next year.
That doesn't surprise me too much, strictly because Australia and New Zealand, a couple of the countries that have taken this head on and barely had any cases of COVID-19, and they want to keep it that way. And you can't necessarily blame them for that. So, not a huge surprise, but obviously it's going to take them a little longer than they expected. They're switching to Pfizer.
Yeah, exactly. And I do want to because I believe, Justin, you had mentioned something about a little travel bubble getaway that they were doing between Australia and New Zealand. They're still allowing this to happen. So Australia and New Zealand are kind of on the same page where they're allowing their citizens to travel back and forth without having to reapply for an exemption or spend time in mandatory quarantine. So that kind of shows a lot of trust and faith in each other's governments and handling of this, which is obviously good to see that at least they seem to be on the same page.
Trusting governments, who would have thought?
Yeah, I don't know, not I. But that's the last thing I have. There's not really much else. No reopenings at this time. I know in the news there was a lot of stuff going on about vaccines being pulled, and the EU in particular being very, very careful on vaccines just because of the new they're encountering a lot of the new strains over there than we are here in the States. So they want to be careful before implementing something across multiple countries, basically continent wide.
Makes sense. So yeah, that may be all the updates that we have directly related to COVID, but I think it ties into the next thing that we kind of wanted to talk about, and that is, I have an article here specifically talking about Emirates, but it's that airlines have started to use IATA's Travel Pass, which is their version of basically a vaccine passport. Obviously using different words because those seem to be trigger words for people, especially here in the States.
Yeah.
But Emirates was the latest airline to begin using it. They started using it back on April 15th, so just last week, and they're using it on 2 routes currently, flights from Dubai to Barcelona and then London to Dubai. England is classifying the United Arab Emirates as a red risk country, so it can only carry passengers from London, which is why that's not going the other way around right now. It's not Dubai to London because they can't do that.
Yeah, and I definitely wanted to touch on this as well because I was reading that Swiss is going to be the first Lufthansa partner that is going to be trialing IATA's Travel Pass app as well. And just listening to the IATA spokespeople that are kind of bringing this bringing this about. This is coming kind of a lot faster than people anticipated, and I think that has a lot to do with certain countries that are wanting to open borders, and there is limited travel, so this is a good time for them to be testing these apps and make sure that they're going to be working across these different airlines and different airports and across the world, because they're really looking for a global travel passport, so that you can go wherever you want as long as you're vaccinated. So very good to see that they were pushing this out sooner than anticipated.
I would agree. At this time, there are 2 other travel passports being used. Or vaccine passports, whatever you want to call them. I don't have the
Yeah.
name right in front of me, but one is specifically being used by the One World carriers and anybody in that American Airlines network. And then the other one, excuse me, being used by JetBlue. But I like seeing IATA coming out with this and presenting it to new airlines, because IATA kind of sets an industry standard for everything within air travel. So if they can get it narrowed down to where it's one thing, I think that would be a good thing for the industry and recovery.
Yeah, and there are definitely going to be other. There's going to be competition, of course, with IATA in that kind of uh, what I guess in that kind of world where we're having to have a separate passport that is showing that we've been vaccinated, which they've already came out and said that they expect other companies to be kind of following suit and creating their own digital passports, if you were. And obviously, we haven't seen too many of those come out yet, because I feel like there's a lot of scrutiny being put on it right now, and there's a lot of pressure to get it right. If you think about it, if people are able to manipulate these applications to just say what they want it to say, they have to be very careful with international standards.
Yeah.
So.
Right on. Well, that's the last thing even kind of COVID relevant that I had as far as traveling actually goes. So you want to get into airline news?
Yeah, we can hop into airline news here. I wanted to start it off here with Qatar Airways CEO is added again in the news. He is very well known to speak his mind when it comes to things he's passionate about, including service and just air, kind of the airline industry as a whole. He recently gave an interview to the Times where he was calling British Airways a 2 out of 10 low cost carrier, which is a pretty big statement. As British Airways is the UK's largest kind of, they're like the Delta of the UK.
Yeah, it's more or less their flagship carrier. Mm-hmm. That's
so he went out saying this, and obviously that is going to cause some controversy, which he's no slouch for causing. He's went on multiple times saying, that Emirates is the gas guzzling dinosaur of the industry, that any airline that is offering premium economies ripping off their customers. Very, very outspoken on his views on what this is. And I honestly can respect that, because it just shows that as a CEO, he actually does care about the industry and care about what he's selling to the people. And yeah, he was accused. He went on accusing Dubai of becoming a COVID super spreader. So just based on there, yeah, he's came out and said quite a few different things, but he's warning that the good times for airline passengers are a thing of the past. And that was mostly because of the former CEO, Alex Cruz, had cut back so many perks and transformed the airline into what he calls a quasi low cost carrier. Now he did go on and say that with their new CEO, Mr. Doyle, he went on and said he's a very good leader and he has my confidence. So he's and kind of he's very good at those compliment sandwiches, like a reverse compliment sandwich, kind of criticizing Mr. Doyle's decision to push premium economy more in the market, since he obviously thinks it's already a joke. So
compliment sandwiches, also known as slander avoiders.
yeah, basically.
You say something nice so you can't get sued.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect anything else from this man. He's obviously very outspoken. So This is I think it's a good thing to kind of bring up though, as I think Justin would probably agree that at least from a travel agent standpoint, British Airways is possibly the worst major carrier to work with from a travel agent perspective.
It can be a challenge. Every time I hear their name, I kind of cringe, and it's not even
Yeah.
something I dealt with. It was a booking you dealt with that I just watch you deal with for days. And what it came down to was, honestly, I'm not even sure it was their fault because it was ticketed weird and the whole thing was a mess. But nobody could resolve it, and it was, what was it, British and American that were involved in that, and neither side could solve the problem.
Yeah, which British and American, they're part of the same a lot. You think
Same
that they could
alliance.
kind of get it together to figure it out, but I think just a lot of it is when people are trying to travel, and so this is kind of just advice for anybody that could be listening that is wanting to fly on British Air. You want to be very careful with the tickets that you purchase. They have some of the most restrictive rules in the industry when it comes to their tickets. You could buy a $7,000 ticket and it is considered a throwaway ticket because it will not allow any changes. You can't do anything with it. So you want to be very careful when just flying on British Air.
I
And
think
I haven't flown them from a customer standpoint, so I can't tell about their service, but
I think it's worth mentioning while we're on that if you're on a website like Expedia and your ticket is combined British Air and American, normally that's something that we would say go ahead and do it. It's completely safe. I would actually avoid that and try to find the same flights that are either American or British Air flight numbers all the way through, because if you have combined British Air and American on there and you run into issues, you're going to have even more issues.
yeah, exactly. So I would agree with that. And honestly, if you're going to be doing that kind of travel, I would probably talk to a travel professional unless you're very well traveled, because if you are trying to book on Expedia or Google Flights or any of those, it's honestly it's pretty confusing. As somebody who works, that's kind of what we do all day. We obviously use our own system, but just from trying to read all of their different rules on these different websites, they make it very difficult.
Agreed. All right. Well, you mentioned low cost carriers, so let's jump into something that involves an actual low cost carrier.
Okay.
Frontier Airlines is going to be returning to Costa Rica in July. There's going to be 2 weekly connections from Miami and Orlando. Frontier, mostly a domestic airline, very limited service to anywhere outside of like the contiguous US states. But this is exciting because Costa Rica has been another one of those places that has been pretty heavy on travel restrictions. And because there's been an increase in cases, there's even like vehicle circulation restrictions on returns on the weekends. So they're even limiting like rental car stuff there. So definitely a look towards the future and seeing some positive changes by July. And with it being Frontier, that means you're probably going to be able to travel to Costa Rica for a pretty low cost.
Yeah, that's huge news. Honestly, I think people have been kind of waiting for the low cost carriers to do some of these shorter international trips. I mean, not technically international.
Not
Everybody knows what
technically,
I
but
mean, but
yeah.
yeah, that's possibly, like Cuba trips, Bahamas, like kind of you're going down into those regions, because I know that JetBlue does a lot of those kind of Central America to South America, that kind of region, those regions. So I would not be surprised at all to see them trying to kind of get their feet wet in some of these closer destinations.
Right
And I
on.
think it'll be good. I think it'll be good for people like us that want to go to these locations and maybe necessarily just want to go for a couple days, and we don't need necessarily all of the a full bag, and being able to save money, just bringing a carry-on, that kind of thing. It's going to be great for backpackers if they can get to some of these locations.
I would agree.
The next thing that I had here was just the American JetBlue partnership that is being watched very closely, under much scrutiny, as a lot of people are worried that this kind of merger. They're not calling it a merger. They're still staying separate, but the partnership is definitely more so than just a code share or being part of the same alliance at this point. They're everybody's kind of got, it's all eyes on them to see kind of what is happening. And just to give a little context of why this is a big deal, um, I think the best kind of picture I can paint is if you think about Atlanta Airport, and it's how Delta central it is.
Yeah.
And yes, there are other carriers there, but if you're looking on a global scale of major airports, you think of Atlanta, and Delta owns basically Atlanta. So they're concerned that this partnership could kind of do the same things but worse in other key international airports kind of in the US. So if you're looking at like a lot of they give quite a few percentages on these where it's American and JetBlue combined flew 44% of all passengers at Boston, and 32% of all passengers at JFK and LaGuardia in 2019. So those are already the most congested airports in the country,
Right.
and you're kind of limiting the choices for the people of New York in that metropolitan area on choices of trying to fly international and domestic, because you're looking at this partnership of JetBlue and American, and you're going to be looking at increased fares, less options, kind of, yeah, it's going to make everything just a lot more expensive, I believe, if they're allowed to kind of do this pseudo merger. Now, it just for anybody that cares about this part, the Department of Transport for the U.S. has actually already approved this, which is it's been in the works for a while, so it's not too uncommon that they would be okay with this, I guess. But the Department of Justice is reviewing it, and if they go back to the Department of Justice to ask them to reverse its approval, this would be very unusual and could cause some more controversy. And a lot of it is related to kind of this Biden era of newly appointed leaders, and there's going to be a lot of eyes on them for what they're passing and what they're allowing, because if this is allowed to be kind of this pseudo merger, it's going to really shake up U.S. travel in not a very good way. I feel.
I would agree. And I think, to kind of give people an idea historically, to give it a comparison, if nothing else, you mentioned Delta has they basically own the Atlanta airport at this point with how many flights they have
Right.
going in and out. And it's been their hub for a long time. However, there was competition there. Delta and Northwest merger was a big deal in that situation because it eliminated all the Northwest flights there and made everything Delta. And that, honestly, that's what made Delta the carrier that it is today. It wouldn't even be competing with American or United if it wasn't for that merger. And then on top of that, you had the airline AirTran that was based out of Atlanta at one point until they went under in 2011 and were absorbed at that time by Southwest. But I would say that there was a good chance that Delta's control of that airport did a lot to killing AirTran's flight offerings out of there. And that's something that we don't want to see happen again. So I think that's why you're seeing a lot of criticism over this deal.
Yeah, and they're also kind of looking at it as American is really taking advantage of JetBlue. Obviously, as JetBlue being a much smaller airline, they're not quite big enough to play in the same kind of sandbox as the larger competitions. But with they have the same similar business and leisure network, and it's kind of like that upscale. It's too upscale to compete effectively with the low cost competition that's in the air on those routes. Yeah. So it kind of in the context of the pandemic, this deep partnership could be a lifeline for JetBlue. So it's very mixed. That's why there's a lot of eyes on it right now, is because it's a very controversial thing, because you have people on both sides really kind of wondering if this isn't going to be such a terrible thing, that maybe this could end up being a good thing in the short term, for keeping competition alive, by just with JetBlue being able to be there. But they haven't released kind of what American is getting out of this.
Hold on, let me look at the camera and call this right now. If this deal is not approved, American will try to acquire JetBlue within the next few years.
Yeah.
I have no doubt about that in my mind because, for people in the Northeast, they're probably thinking, what are you talking about? JetBlue is one of the main carriers here. And I'm like, yeah, there, but that's about it. Because anywhere else in the country, most places, they don't even have a presence. I mean, in the Midwest, I've never seen a JetBlue aircraft.
I'm trying to think if I have. Yeah. And I mean, I would be more prone to probably see JetBlue here, but
Yeah.
I still don't think I don't think I have.
No. So yeah, it'll be definitely interesting to watch that, and I'm sure we'll have updates on that as time goes on because it's getting very heavily scrutinized. So there'll be news.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, it wouldn't be one of our podcasts if we didn't talk about something negative with United Airlines.
Oh gosh, I didn't even see anything. I'm so glad you found something.
Yeah. And this is just news about something that's already happened. So, as most people know, back in February, United Airlines had a plane that had to make an emergency landing after an engine malfunction, where the aircraft was dropping parts over just random neighborhoods. Two of the passengers that were on that flight, somebody from Honolulu and somebody from Sioux City, Iowa, have decided to sue the airline, and they are seeking damages for both emotional and physical injury.
Physical? Did they get hurt physically?
That's hard to say. They're saying financial injury as well, and I'm not really sure what that would apply to in this situation.
Like they had to go to therapy, so they're missing work. Like they want wages. Like I don't know. I don't understand that.
I don't get it either, but
I feel like you said there was only two on this flight that have came forward trying to sue about it.
As of right now, there are only two of them. The name's Joseph McGinley and Jonathan Strawn, and they are looking for a judgment above a $50,000 limit, which is why it has to go to court. If it was under 50,000, United could have settled outside of court. But
gosh, this seems like one of those things where they get home and tell the story to like a friend, and their friend, they're having a couple beers, and the friend goes, "I bet you could sue for that," and he goes, "You damn right I could," and then they just do it.
Right.
I don't feel like they're going to get very much, if anything, out of this.
The only thing I could see is United trying to come up with some kind of settlement to avoid the court costs and stuff. But if United thinks they can win, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think that they would settle this, because then it's just going to bring the other people forward and being like, oh, okay, well, I guess if they're just handing out money for this, then I'll sue them as well.
Yeah.
I feel like that would open the floodgates for anyone that was on that flight. So yeah, that is interesting. So they're trying to sue because they had to make an emergency landing, if I remember right, and then stuff was falling off of the plane, and that's it. I mean, the landing went okay. Like, I don't understand.
They're trying to sue, but they landed fine. As far as I know, there were no injuries on the aircraft. The only person that I could see suing is the guy that, I don't know if you've seen the picture, but basically has the front of the engine compartment sitting in his front yard.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I would be. Yeah. If I was that guy, I would be. I would definitely be coming after United, but that's not.
And I haven't heard if there's any litigation on top of that. And to be honest, I would not be surprised if United's insurance has already kind of paid him out. So
yeah, like squash that.
Yeah. So I don't know, but yeah, that's all. That's all I have for the airlines, but it actually kind of allows me to translate into something else, hotel related. So do you have anything else on airlines?
Nope, we are good. Okay.
Well, I brought up insurance with United, and this is what I wanted to bring up, and that is that hospitality companies thought their insurance coverage was going to be there for them in any time in a crisis, and they weren't. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the insurance plans that hospitality companies such as hotels have, they have what's called a business interruption insurance as part of their insurance policies. Well, a lot of these hotels and things, especially like in Las Vegas, were shut down for a good portion of 2020. Unfortunately, pandemics aren't covered under that policy. So Caesars Entertainment, that owns a good portion of the hotels on the Las Vegas Strip, it's the latest company to go towards having a legal fight against its insurer to get a business interruption insurance payout due to government ordered pandemic restrictions. And that's where they're arguing that there's a difference. Pandemics say they aren't covered. However, this was a government restriction that told them they had to shut down. So because of that, they're taking their insurers to court to try to get, money for that time that they were closed.
Yeah, I would say that they're probably going to win that. The people who are saying that it's due to the government, because I feel like there's probably some kind of writing in there that if it's a government restriction, then they have to pay it out, because that's basically telling someone that they have to break a federal law to do whatever it is that was in the contract.
I can relate to that.
I feel like
that's another story.
That's gotta happen.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And if nothing else, this is definitely going to change the way that insurance policies are written for hotels and hospitality industry companies, because they're going to want to make sure they cover their butt. The hotels are going to want to make sure they get covered. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens with this one too.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually don't have anything on hotels really, so if at least
I guess I'll keep going then.
Yeah, I don't have anything new from last week that I had.
Let's do a small one and then the little bit bigger one that we kind of touched on last week. The smaller one is just that Marriott is teaming up with Uber to bolster its Bonvoy loyalty offering. If you take Uber rides, you can now gain points on your Marriott Bonvoy account. That's something that we're kind of seeing. Hilton actually has a partnership with Lyft, I believe, already. So not a huge surprise, but yeah, another way to get points to stay at hotels free if you take Uber all the time. And that was just a light touch on. This one's a little bit bigger deal. And this is an article about travel having a labor problem because surge in demand is leaving operators scrambling. And basically the case is that at this point, nobody expected the industry to recover as quickly as it has.
I did.
Andrew did.
I called it.
He did.
I called it months ago that this was exactly going to happen. So Bill Gates, I know you're listening. I was right. You're wrong. Thank you.
I was even a little hesitant to agree with Andrew on that one. But yeah, it looks like all these places are back in and they're having trouble finding employees. Delta just recently canceled 100 flights due to pilot shortages. That was earlier this month.
I want to stop you. I want to pause you there because that's if we covered this probably in one of our way earlier episodes, that Delta does not cancel flights. They do not delay flights. They're kind of an industry leader in the least amount of canceled flights, and they always have been. They cancel, a handful of flights per year, and that's countrywide or internationally even. So highest percentage. And if they're having to cancel 100, that's probably, don't quote me on it, but I would say that's probably more than they canceled for probably an entire year of like 2018 or something. So I would be that's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then hotels being hit even harder than the airlines, because the airlines are obviously able to get people back because there's competitive pay when it comes to pilots. Hotel industry having a lot more trouble because a lot of these were low paying jobs. You do see the people who are getting a $300 boost in their weekly unemployment benefits that were laid off and not furloughed. They may not be so quick to apply to come back. And if they were laid off instead of furloughed, they do not technically have to accept your offer. On top of that, the pay is just low. And a lot of these people went to other jobs. Even retail at this point in most industries is paying higher than the hospitality industry is, with hotel pay being honestly probably the lowest pay in any industry at this point other than restaurants.
Yeah, which is still hospitality. That's
which is still hospitality.
The hospitality world. I think that this is a rude awakening for a lot of companies that, loyalty goes so much further than they had thought previously, pre-pandemic. I know that even I was called back to work, and there were quite a few agents that did not come back to a well-paying job just because they went somewhere else for the time being. And if you think about, that's a pretty well, yeah, like I said, you can definitely make ends meet with this job. And if they're going somewhere else, think about the industries like hotels where they're not even being able to make ends meet with their 40 hours a week. And why would they come back to that? It's definitely a shock to their system of, oh, we need to pay people more. So we'll see. They're saying that people don't want to work, but I think that they need to reassess their kind of alignment with payroll to get people to come back to work.
People don't want to work for unfair wages, and that's definitely what it comes down to. I would say, and obviously this is just personal opinion at this point, but if you aren't competing with what those people are making on that $300 boost in unemployment, the boost isn't the problem. Your pay rate is.
Exactly. Yeah, because you think that in Michigan, I know at least the unemployment is somewhere around 340 a week. So you're looking at 640 a week with unemployment, and then you're getting a monthly of 2,500 or so, and this is all pre-tax, obviously. But then that only equates to 30,000 a year. You're telling me that you as a company are trying to hire someone for less than 30,000 a year.
And I think it's important to mention, sorry, that, the pay Andrew's referencing to, that 340 a week, the amount that you get in unemployment is directly based on your wages of the last few quarters. That 340 is the max. That's something that somewhere like me and Andrew would be eligible for. Somebody in hospitality, you're probably talking closer to 200 a week, plus the $300 boost. That's $500 a week. So $500 a week divided by 40 hours a week, that's $1,250 an hour.
And you're making 24,000 a year roughly before taxes.
Exactly.
That's ridiculous. That is being expected, because you hear people complaining about, oh, well, unemployment's too high. They're getting too much money, and you look at it. This is what I'm getting a year. It's under 31,000 a year, and you're telling me that a company cannot pay someone more than that amount. That's insane to me. And people saying that people want to just be on unemployment, I would also argue that is another pretty ridiculous statement, because you just basically are taking the extra 300 out of that equation, and so 340 a week, and I'm making what would that be, about 17,000 a year. I'm sorry. If you're offering 17,000 a year for any position, shame on you.
Yeah, that's I get all blasphemed. I don't even know what term to use talking about this.
I don't know if that's a word, but it's definitely frustrating for people that are in the hospitality industry, especially just mainstream media is very, very quick to jump on the fact that people don't want to, quote unquote, don't want to work. And it's quote unquote, companies don't want to pay.
Yeah.
So that's what it comes down to. A lot is expected, but I still don't have anything necessarily new on hotel. If you have anything else.
I don't have anything on hotels. The only last thing I have is on car rentals.
Okay. I do have just a little something on cruises. Since I've got small ship cruise lines are going to be moving forward with Alaskan Cruises. In this for summer. So this is kind of big news, I guess, because of COVID restrictions not allowing large ship in and out of Alaska for 2021, just based on the restrictions that are in place, where you have to be able to accommodate if the entire ship is basically needs to be quarantined. But several of the U.S. flagged small ship operators are going to be sailing states' waters through summer, and this would be Alaskan Dream Cruises, Uncruise Adventures, Lindblad. I don't know. I've actually never heard of that one. Lindblad Expeditions. They're going to be partnering with National Geographic to build educational experiences in Alaskan itineraries. So that should be pretty cool. And then as well as American Cruise Lines. So there are some cruises that are going to be going on. We'll make sure that we have a link of this in the description below to anybody that wants to kind of dig a little bit deeper if you're considering an Alaskan cruise. But yeah, it looks like they're getting ready to go through. These are going to be smaller ships. This is not going to be gigantic cruise liners due to restrictions, but that might make it even more enjoyable for certain travelers. So I'll make sure we'll put that in.
Right on. Is that all the cruise news you get?
Yep.
Okay. So this last thing is actually about Hertz. As many people know, they filed for bankruptcy last year, and as far as being bought, there's been a bit of a bidding war for them. Originally, there was a consortium of investors led by companies Knighthead and Certares that had an offer on the table. They made a very strong offer, but someone else came in and offered something against them. Now they have partnered with backing from Apollo Investments to make an offer that values Hertz at $6.2 billion. So a very strong offer to buy out the Hertz rental car company. As far as the Apollo management services and what their portfolio kind of includes currently, their biggest company is ADT Security, but they do also have interest in Diamond Resorts, Great Wolf Lodge, Qdoba, and Coinstar. So there are other things within the hospitality industry there that they do kind of already have interest in and have been successful with. So I think it'll be interesting to see if Hertz ends up having a new investment group behind it sometime this year.
Okay. That's definitely something to keep an eye on to see where they end up going. Yeah, Hertz was one of the first companies. As soon as the pandemic hit, they're like, "Oh no, we're bankrupt," and it wasn't it. They were trying to use it as a cop out of their already failing system. But
yeah, I mean, I think we as travel agents kind of already knew Hertz was struggling,
overpriced, and I mean that's the biggest thing is that for the car industry, the car rental industry, I should say, it's very overpriced comparatively to every other company for what essentially was no reason.
Agreed.
The last thing that I had here was just about Walt Disney World being back open.
Yes.
And just kind of somebody's experience from the first time that they had been there since March of last year. So probably just before it had been closed for pandemic reasons. And it's just going on that you can't just drop in anymore. You need a dated and sometimes time-stamped reservation to enter. The new health and safety protocols to meet, undergoing the security check before entering the park. You have your temperature taken. It's a requirement also for table service dining. So plan on that if you're going to be going in there and then also eating, because you're going to be doing it multiple times. So it's just kind of to offer that reassurance that those around you aren't symptomatic as well. It's also reassuring that the parks are open, limited capacity. So this is kind of, they're operating at 35% is what the report is saying, 35% capacity for Disney World. Lines can still get long in afternoon, evening, but they appear to move quickly just because they were specially designed to keep people 6 feet apart. So each party is still 6 feet apart. So the lines appear long. They move a lot faster than probably you would imagine if you've been there in the past and you've been at the same distance in the line. But it says that the crowds in general they're noticeably light, and as the day went on, it got more crowded, but never like they did before, pre-COVID times. So their strict observance of masking seems to be paying off. It looks like they've kind of got people on loudspeakers that are going to be reminding guests to be wearing their masks and properly how to wear their mask at all times. They do have designated spots where you can remove your mask for stationary eating, drinking, rest areas, photo ops, that kind of thing. And that from what this guest had observed, no one seemed to be abusing the photo policy. So
yeah, and that it's worth mentioning that photo policy is relatively recent. Up until last week, they were not allowing you to take off your mask with photo pass people while taking the photos. They've since found a way to socially distance their photographers, and that was a new big development. So if you were a Disney fan, that was huge to be able to hear you could take off your mask in order to get your picture taken.
Yeah, absolutely. They said that there's a few things that have kind of made it not the quote unquote full Disney experience, but it didn't detract from the attractions itself, especially for guests who have visited before. I guess they're still not doing the fireworks at night, but the parades have been replaced with character cavalcades that randomly appear throughout the day. So it kind of they're putting like a positive spin on it, not being able to do the parades necessarily, but at least from these guests' opinions, they actually preferred the cavalcades because it seemed more sporadic and more fun because it wasn't so designated. The parade's at 9 and this is what you're going to see, so it seemed a little bit more random, I guess.
Random's fun.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was the last thing that I had, though. Just wanted to touch on kind of just what Disney World looks like 1 year from 1 year ago, from before COVID.
Right on. So yeah, not a lot of new news this week, just some little things that we kind of touched on, and things that honestly are stories that are going to be more updated in the future, as far as American and United and Hertz and all these different things. But I think we're still at a positive point at this point. We're seeing things kind of turn around to where we're seeing more and more people can travel, but that doesn't mean that everything in this episode was necessarily very inspirational.
In a world where a single quote can inspire and drive the most stubborn of mules, Unknown Destination is here to deliver.
All right, and I've got one here that is: a mind that is stretched by a new experience can never go back to its old dimensions.
I like that one a lot, actually.
Yeah, this in regards to travel is just it definitely hits me hard. It's kind of those, maybe you're planning on going on this wonderful beach vacation somewhere exotic, but you have a stopover in maybe not such a nice airport, and you get out and you kind of experience the local kind of the local environment for a little bit, and it gives you a little bit of perspective on how grateful you should be for what you have, which I try to make it a point whenever I travel to make sure I go to these places to keep myself grounded.
It's not working.
Yeah, no, I've been locked down. I need to go again. I need to realign myself. But I just want to thank everybody for listening to this episode here on Unknown Destination. That's Justin. I'm Andrew. Make sure that if you like this content, or you don't, just give us comments, suggestions. Make sure you follow us so you can keep up to date. We are going to be doing more regularly scheduled podcast uploads for you guys, especially as things are opening up and restrictions are changing and lessening, or as we get the news in front of us. I know that being back in the industry myself, I will be able to have a little bit more insight into certain things in real time. So yeah, just stay tuned for that, and we hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time.
See y'all later.